I do. I should probably tell you a little bit about Marine Corps University and what that is, as most of you might say. Marine Corps has a university. And yes, they do. So I'm part of a PME, Professional Military Education apparatus. Where I teach is Quantico, Virginia. Home base is for the Marine Corps, one of the bases for the Marine Corps. Well, we teach about 230 students a year who are active duty military majors, so intermediate level education. They receive a master's in military education, but only after they go through 2 civilian professors. One, like myself, is a historian, and my specialty, as you probably would guess, is military history. The other would be security studies or international relations, so a lot of political science stuff that you guys would be perhaps most familiar with. And then they get trained by a military colonel, usually, colonel or lieutenant colonel, in warfighting and leadership. So this student body, which is not just Marines, it is also Army, Air Force, this is the Navy, and it is also intergovernment agency personnel as well. So it's FBI, USAID, State Department, and then last but not least, we have foreign students from usually 20 or 25 different countries, and they come as well. So it's Marine Corps University, but the apparatus is, the student body is diverse, and it's quite an interesting place. I can tell you, they're a lot more sanguine about cyber warfare than you guys are. So leave it to the civilians to make you think twice, and to make you think that things are not going as well as I thought they would. But let me stop. So that introduces my place.
Yeah, and I think the role of civilians is interesting, and you talk about this concept of cyber rebellions, which I want to get into a second. But first, the kind of broad scope of this paper is about openness and the kind of tension between openness and internet security. So can you sort of break down that dynamic in terms of what it means for liberal regimes?
I can try. So this, what I wrote for the journal, is a small piece of what I'm driving at. I'm interested in the metaphysical realities of cyberspace and what those mean for the evolution of warfare. So the Marine Corps is always looking at what is the next war, how is it going to be fought, what is going to be their role. So in that context, they do a lot of questions about what is human nature, a lot of philosophical standings. So I would tell you the Marine Corps so I'm a DoD employee, so the Department of Defense probably knows where they stand in cyberspace at the operational level. So as I hear this conversation tonight, I would say that's more at the strategic level. And that part rests in the hands of civilians. And so the civilians are at the front line of an ideological war premised on openness. And the military, I think the US military is happy to let that war play itself out without their involvement, because of course if they stepped into that, that would lead to a lot of militarization of a domain that should not be militarized. I think they would agree with that. So openness, promoting and advancing a free space, a cognitive space in cyberspace where the sharing of information can be done without fear of government surveillance, which I would argue is a fundamental premise of the United States government. That space is, and that is the policy of the United States. So we do have a policy in cyberspace, and that is to promote and advance openness. That has spanned the 2 administrations, both the Obama administration and the current administration. So it's been a consistent mandate, and it is one where the military treads carefully to leave more in a civilian setting. And so his openness, can it withstand the current, I'd say, deliberately orchestrated offensive from our adversaries? And how is that going to play out? So that's how I would define openness. It's a strategic reality, primarily left to civilians to have to figure out.
And I think one of the things that this openness can lead to, especially in autocratic regimes, is these cyber rebellions, which we talk about in the piece. Can you give us some examples of these cyber rebellions and how authoritarian regimes typically respond?
Well, I can try. Some of it was already mentioned, so I enjoyed, already learned a lot just listening to you guys this evening. But I would tell you that the trepidation and the anxiety we all feel now is how this started. That authoritarian regimes clearly saw the threat that an open internet posed to them, an idea of value-laden ideological threat to their existence. The idea of freely trading information in a cognitive space without government oversight was clearly a direct threat to their standing. So they had to respond to that, and they've effectively done so and by that I mean cyber rebellions. So someone mentioned Arab Spring, that's fine. I would mention events in Ukraine. I would mention Estonia in 2007. I would mention women in Turkey who were told not to smile and instead went online and smiled and posted pictures of themselves smiling as much as they could. Just these countless examples of people taking democratic activist steps and promoting a space, an intellectual space that is vital and really speaks to our norms and sensibilities. So this success clearly had to be answered to by our adversaries, has been, and to my dismay, I would be put off with how quickly we are afraid of too much information. The founding of the country was based on transparency and sharing information, so I would still want to see that protected and safeguarded.
I got an excerpt from your piece I want to read that I thought was fascinating, and it says, tolerating cyber rebellions at home and encouraging them abroad can strengthen democracy. For this to happen, Americans must allow Russian voices into their cyberspace, though not in their election process. So can you sort of unpack that dynamic? How does allowing Russian perspectives into American cyberspace strengthen democracy?
I say if you start kicking the Russians out of our space, that's tyranny. If the country cannot withstand multiple points of view and cannot distinguish what is a confirmation of American sensibilities, we got bigger problems than Twitter, Facebook, and things like that. So I don't fear sharing the space, although I welcome the efforts here to try to identify, to try to expose, to try to really hold accountable the disingenuous efforts of people to disguise it. But I would never, if you tell me a third party is going to come in and control the intellectual space on the internet, that strikes me as alarming.